All right, welcome back to Brandon Farm. If you're new here, hi, my name is Danielle. This channel is all about worms, chickens, and gardening, so just so you know. Today, I'm gonna reset my worm bin. So I have two worm farms going right now. One is a 3-tiered system from Walmart, and then another one is just a big Purina bucket, just full of like worm farm business. And the big bucket is the one I'm gonna be resetting today. So I'm gonna show you the bucket, and then show you like all the supplies you're gonna need and how I reset my worms. All right, this is the bucket I'm talking about, the one I'm going to reset today. It's just one of those big cattle cube Purina buckets. So I've got all my supplies set up here. I've got my extra buckets in case I need them. I have one bucket that's full of grass clippings. I have my table to have like a working surface. And then I have some paper that I'm gonna shred up and just extra bins for this process. All right, so my first step is going to be getting this top layer of leaves out. We put the leaves on there to help keep the moisture in. So I can always just reuse these leaves. So I'm just going to pull out this top layer. Okay, so let me just give you a little bit of background on worms. I do have a couple worm videos on here already. I got into worms, I guess it's almost been a year now. And I took a worm course with Hey, It's a Good Life from Natalie. And that's kind of how I learned how to do this. We also watched a bunch of YouTube videos. I think it was Mr. Jim. I don't know, not the pizza. We did get our worms from Mimi's Worms. So yeah, we've had worms for a while now, almost a year. Anyway, so this is how I'm gonna reset my bucket. I'm gonna pull this top layer out. It's all good stuff. And then I'm just gonna slowly dump this out and pick out all the worms. Okay, so my goal today is gonna be castings, and it's going to be compost. Those are the two things I want to separate. All right, so here's what I'm going to start with, and all I'm going to do is just kind of get this to be a thin layer here, and I'm going to collect all my worms. This is kind of on the drier side here. So what I did is I just took a bucket and I put a little bit of compost in there with whatever leaves I can pull out of this, and that's where I'm going to throw all of my worms. So I want to get the majority of the worms out, so when I sift, all I'm getting is like worm castings and then worm compost, because I want to reset my worm bin. So my goal is to pull out all the worms, and I'm just going to put them straight into this bucket. That way they keep making new little worm babies. Little worm babies. All right, so this is kind of like everything that's left behind, right? This is a very nutrient dense worm compost. It's got a lot of worm castings in it. This one actually has a lot of the sacs, the worm eggs. Okay, so once I have cleared a section here that I do believe has no worms in it, and you just want to, like, as you go, just pick them out. So all of this I can sift out to just get regular castings, like straight castings, or I could use it for just compost. So I just want to make sure there's no worms in here, and if there is, that's fine too. You'll get them whenever you sift it, and I'm just pushing it into this bucket. So this is all worm castings and compost. So this is a very time-consuming process here, to say the least. These worms are kind of slow-moving, which kind of tells me either they don't have enough food, like kitchen scraps, or it's not wet enough for them. I'm just pulling out all the leaves and all the worms and putting it in my bucket. And everything that's left over, which is mostly castings, I'm just gonna push into my separate bucket here. sometimes if you get it thin enough, you can kind of see if anything is moving. Again, you could just put all of this into a sifter and sift everything out. Kind of all about how you want to do it here. I've come up with a system. Okay, so I've got my sieve, I've got a bucket to catch all my castings, and then I just have this, I don't know how big this is, a gallon tote here, for my compost. So this is all my worm compost, and I'm going through and I'm just making sure there's no worms in here because, you know, if there is, they're not gonna make it. So this has worm compost and worm castings in it, and then, like I said, I have my sieve, and then all of my castings. These are all straight worm castings. They're gonna go on my seedlings. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so I just have my sieve setting on my bucket, just like this. And then I've got my big worm bucket here. So I've got the big worm bucket. So I'm just taking a handful, putting it on the table here, going through and getting like all the leaves and stuff out. And the worms, all my worms will go in this 5-gallon bucket here. And then I'm just scooping it onto my sieve and getting all my worm castings, and whatever is left in the top of the sieve just goes straight into the compost. It's a pretty good system. A little bit better. Okay, so I've got this top layer that just came straight out of the worm bin, and I'm just roughly going through, picking out all of the leaves and mulch, stuff like that that's going to get clogged in the sieve, and then all the worms I can see, and then just pushing that into here, into my sieve, and just kind of working through it. Moving it around because it's still pretty moist, so I don't want too much in here. And then, like, as I go, just pulling all the leaves out, all the worm babies out, and just moving that around. So then I'm left with kind of this situation here. Dump that into my compost. Do y'all hear that? A question you might have is, when do you harvest your worm farm? Okay, so in order to give you a better idea of when to harvest your worm farm, what you're looking for is the matter that's in there that's broken down. So are your leaves broken down? Is your browns broken down? Is it a dark, earthy color? Does it have that earthy smell to it? All of these questions you're gonna ask yourself. So what you're looking for is this light, fluffy, very broken down, composty like material that has a dark, rich color to it. If your worm farm looks like that, it's probably time to go ahead and harvest your castings or your compost and reset that worm bin. If it's not like that, say like you've got whole, a bunch of leaves in there, or you've got your cardboard is still freshly intact, or your kitchen scraps have not been decomposed yet, then I would say probably not. It's probably not time to harvest your castings or your worm compost. All right, so in this video, I will be showing you how I reset my worm farm. And by reset, I mean like basically you're restarting your worm farm, starting from fresh. So how I layer kind of the resources I have to do that. Like I said before, this is the most time-consuming part, is filtering out all of the compost and the castings. It just kind of depends on what kind of a system you have going. I feel like there's really not an efficient way to do this. And if there is, well then please tell me, drop it in the comments. I'd love to know, like, if you're worm farming, and how your system looks like, or what your system look like, how you do things with your worms, your why of worm farming, I would love to know. So if you have any kind of comment, please drop it below. I will tell you, which I don't know if I've already mentioned it in this video or not, but my biggest resource is going to be Hey It's a Good Life, Natalie. She's got worm farming courses. She's all about the worm farming. She does a lot of like presentations, speaking, stuff like that at conventions and whatnot about worm farming. So she's got a wealth of knowledge and resources for that matter. If you're just looking into getting into worm farming or you want to know more about worm farming coming up in the near future, hopefully, I will be kind of a part of her overall big plan, right? So we will be collaborating on a couple things. All right, welcome back. It's the next day. The first half of this video, you saw basically just me resetting this worm bin. So I made it through the big bucket, and I actually kind of cheated because I'm telling you, it's a lengthy process when you have to separate all your castings from your compost and your worms. So this is what was left, plus a little bit more in a different bucket. But we're just going to call that my worms and the compost. So that'll be some of the layers that we're going to use when we reset our bin. Okay, so as you can see, my husband is back here. Say hi, Brad.
Hi.
So he's currently shredding some cardboard and some paper. And just a side note, if you're shredding paper for your worms, you don't want, like, say, like the envelopes. Okay, so if you're shredding paper and it's got this clear plastic in here and it's also got like this glue on the side, this is not what you want to use. You want to use just regular paper without any glue or kind of adhesive or plastic in it. Okay, I follow Hey It's a Good Life, Natalie. If you're interested in getting more information on that, more resources, she's on, I think she's on YouTube. I know for sure she's on Instagram, and she's got her own website. So, Hey It's a Good Life, Natalie, look her up. So I followed her course, The Gardener's Guide to Worm Farming. And I usually reference this every time I reset a worm bin, just because I want to make sure I'm doing it the right way. So she's got a lot of informational stuff in here, but she has this chart that I like to follow when I'm resetting the bin. Right here. So when you're layering the worm bin, these are going to be your layers. This is what you want to start with. So if I'm following these, I'm going to restart this worm bin. My first layer is going to be a paper bag. In this case, I'm just going to use some cardboard on the bottom here. All right, so again, when you're using the cardboard, all of this like tape and stuff has got to come off. You don't want to use the tape. And if you have like a heavily colored cardboard, or if it's like glossy cardboard, you don't want to use that either. You just want plain cardboard. So all I'm going to do is smush this cardboard down into my bin. Maybe add a few more layers here. I want that base to be cardboard. Okay? Just like that. Alright, so I've got all of my supplies. And by supplies, I mean everything that's listed on my little worm chart here. So I have browns, worms. The only thing I don't have down here is food scraps. Then I've got my compost and my grit. So we're going to start with cardboard as our base layer. And then it says to do browns. So for browns, I'm going to use some leaves. I'm just going to make a layer of that. And then it says compost. So I have this bag of organic compost. Before I do that, we're going to wet each layer. Alright. Handy dandy hose. That's on jet.
lot of water in there.
Alright, so we're just gonna give that a little squirt, and then we're gonna do our next layer. I have grass clippings. Okay. And then food scraps and grit. I don't really have any food scraps right now. There's like one banana peel in there. So for grit, I'm gonna use perlite. You can also use sand. Okay, so when we ordered our worms from Mimi's Worms, they sent us a bag of worm chow. And actually, I think she sent a recipe too on how to make it. Or I saw it somewhere. You can actually make your own worm chow. So instead of the scraps, I'm just gonna do a little bit of the worm chow. Browns, I'm also gonna use the shredded paper and shredded cardboard. A little soap. And you're basically just gonna keep repeating these steps. So browns, compost, grit, and then your worms go towards the top. Okay, so another thing I'm gonna add are these grass clippings. All right, so I'm gonna do some grass clippings. More grit. I'm gonna need some food scraps. And just like that, we've reset our worm bin. This is pretty full, but over time, you know, it will sink down a little bit as the layers start to decompose, and it'll start sinking down. So we're gonna put this back in the garage, and there it will sit, and we'll just keep feeding it. I think the rule of thumb is like once a week. You wanna feed it your food scraps. And yeah, there you go. You got a worm farm. At the end of it, depending on what you're wanting to get out of it, this is all worm castings. I don't even know how much this thing weighs, but it's heavy. This is just straight sieved worm castings. And then I have this big tote of just worm compost. This is all the compost that I have. That came out of that bucket. Again, so heavy. Anyway, so, you know, get yourself a worm bin, grow messy. Worms are not hard. It's very hands-off. It's just, you know, setting it up, making sure that you have all the right stuff to set it up, and making sure you feed them once a week, and then harvest it when your bin's ready to harvest. I just want to show you guys right quick on these castings. Like I was talking to you yesterday, this texture is insane. Look at that. I mean, it just falls right off. It doesn't stick to your hands or anything. It feels nuts. It's so light and fluffy, and you can just tell it's just like oozing with nutrition. It's like the coolest thing. I don't know, it's nuts.
You can play with your worm poop all day long.
Play with my worm poop. It's the coolest feeling. I can't describe it. I don't know. I like it. If you like our videos, give us a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and continue watching, because I'm sure, you know, we're always up to something. Anyway, thanks for watching. Okay, we'll call that one the freeze frame. Say hi, Brad.